Now, Team Trump is trying to punish so-called sanctuary cities by withholding federal funding. However, it's being jammed up in the federal courts right now. And the House passed legislation to defund these lawless municipalities. However, it is being jammed up in the Senate. So what's the constitutional solution to this self-inflicted law enforcement logjam? Well, one solution could be an Article 5 Convention of the States, which has never been triggered in this nation's history. Joining me now from Charleston, South Carolina, Regional Director of the Convention of the States Project, Ken Clark. Ken, this possibly could be a solution. And when we talk about term limits, which is a huge problem in Washington, D.C., I want to go to another presidential tweet, if I may. This from Donald Trump, quote, "Drain the swamp should be changed to drain the sewer." It's actually much worse than anyone ever thought. So the president is already on record in favor of term limits for Congress. I would throw in their United States Supreme Court as well, and possibly other elements of the federal government. So if the president's on record for term limits, and you and I think we all know that there's no way that Washington, D.C. is going to vote for term limits for itself. The only other solution that I see is an Article 5 Convention of the States, and one of the possible amendments to the Constitution would be congressional term limits.
Mitch McConnell already said that term limits were dead on arrival, so there is no way anyone in Washington, D.C. is going to do anything to limit their own power. You're absolutely right. The only way that's going to happen is if we, the people, actually force term limits on all federal officials, including members of Congress.
All right, so you all are fresh back from ALEC. That's the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's essentially state legislators who happen to believe in the notion of limited government, which is what the framers of the Constitution believed in as well. From what I'm hearing, the response of your presentations and just talking about Convention of the States was received rather warmly.
You know, it was received very, very well, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Federalism seems to be the word of the day. And it's not just a fad. This is a huge movement that's happening in all 50 states. You know, the Democrats don't like Trump any more than we liked Obama, but federalism seems to be the key. So at the ALEC conference, that's what the underwriting theme was over and over again. So the Convention of States breakout session was standing room only. Senator Tom Coburn, Senator Jim DeMint, Mark Meckler, and Rita Dunaway did a terrific job. I mean, it was literally standing room only. There was no more room for any warm bodies in there. And we had a tremendous, tremendous successful event.
Now, House Speaker Paul Ryan proffered a video that apparently was played to the folks there, and it was apparently, at least on the part of some of the participants, met with a chorus of boos. Some people walked out. I'm not talking about this to embarrass the Speaker of the House. I'm talking about it to make a point, and that is the Republican establishment does not necessarily support a convention of the states, just like Democrats, by and large, don't support these conventions of the states because it would impose term limits, among other things, in a balanced budget amendment.
Well, the Paul Ryan video was actually shown at the Western Conservative Summit. The Convention of States Project, we did a panel discussion and a breakout session there as well. But you're absolutely right. People are sick to death of the Republican Party. All you got to do is go back to last week and take a look at what happened in the fiasco about trying to repeal and replace Obamacare. The Republicans have been running on that for 7 years, and they cannot get it done. Frankly, the people throughout the United States, they've had it. The Republican Party won't do what they promised to do. They're just as bad as far as maintaining the status quo. That means that the Convention of States Project, Article 5, is the only way to put the federal government back in its box. Term limits, reining in spending, and deregulating the people.
Now, the opposition to an Article 5 is not relegated to some Republicans, a lot of Democrats. It's also the mainstream media that's participating in this pushback, again, because the mainstream media is largely, by and large, backing the Democrat Party. And in The Nation, they reported on the ALEC meeting, and this is an excerpt from an article entitled, "ALEC Taking Away Your Vote. ALEC is considering whether to adopt a new piece of, quote, model legislation, end quote, that proposes reversing 104 years of representative democracy and returning to the bad old days when senators were chosen via backroom deals." What this is referring to is the 17th Amendment, which was changed the way we elect senators to Congress 104 years ago. The framers of the Constitution wanted them elected through state legislatures so the states could have a say. And of course, the state legislatures then represent the people of those states. So this is one of the examples of the pushback to an Article 5. But in reality, this is total ignorance to what transpired 104 years ago, which was part of the progressive movement.
Well, you know, it's interesting, and we got to go back to it. What is really happening? It is human nature to try to consolidate and increase your own personal power, right? So the idea that we expect Washington, D.C. to limit their own power, to limit their own ability to spend, to limit their own term, I mean, we're asking them to go and do what is contrary to human nature. It's not going to happen. And so, yeah, it used to be when the founders created the Constitution and they decided that the states would be very protective of their own power, meaning, you know, they're going to act in their own self-interest. And when the 17th Amendment came along, all of a sudden the state legislatures had no way to protect their own power in Washington, D.C. And that's where the pushback comes from. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. They're wrong.
It takes 34 states to trigger an Article 5. 12 has signed up so far. You represent 6 states, none of which has signed on so far. I'm almost out of time here. Any sign that any of the 6, possibly Mississippi, Colorado, any of them maybe in the fall triggering?
Ohio is still in the hunt. North Carolina is still in the hunt. Mississippi looks good. South Carolina will start next year. So will Kentucky, and so will Colorado. But I've already passed Louisiana and Tennessee. So they now go into the past states category, but they're still very active.
All right, well, good luck on that. And people are searching for a bipartisan solution to what is wrong with Washington, D.C. This is it, folks. You're staring at it. It's in Article 5 in the United States Constitution. Ken, thank you.
Sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Our success depends on you, so we're inviting you to be part of history. Let's invoke the constitutional solution that's as big as the problem.